It's time for 41 is the Mic, a weekly Chiefs podcast with Nick Jacobs of KSHB 41 and Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. 41 is the Mic starts now.
It would not be a Chiefs game if it didn't come down to the last play, or maybe at least the next to last play. You're here with 41 is the Mic. I am Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest alongside Thanksgiving leftover enthusiast Nick Jacobs.
Yeah, I mean, I had some quality leftovers available for the weekend, so I will continue to eat those. But yes, you're right. That is a part of what's going on this weekend. My enthusiasm.
I think Thanksgiving leftovers are better than Thanksgiving dinner, but day of. But that's me.
Anything I don't have to cook, I'm good with.
Well, I feel like I saw a football team that had a lot of turkey and maybe a lot of tryptophan on Thursday, because they kind of sleptwalked through a Black Friday game at Arrowhead Stadium. That was the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, they escaped with a 19-17 win over the Raiders, but Nick, this was a sleepy looking team on Friday.
It was a football team that I really liked what the Chiefs offense did early on in that first drive. I was encouraged by that. Then some of the play calling there inside the 10 kind of had me going, all right, and then had to settle for the field goal. But then they got finally, after a while, they finally ended up getting that franchise-setting touchdown that Mahomes had to Justin Watson to break Lynn Dawson's record. And so you're like, okay, hey, let's see what you can do with the next couple, and then kind of just wandered around until the Raiders decided to have a big kick return and force themselves back into the game.
Well, I mean, the game came down to the next to last play, and that's the one that obviously is the biggest story coming out of this one. Yeah. The botched snap. To me, it was obviously it brought back echoes of the Chargers on Monday night, fumbling snap when they were just trying to kneel down and letting the Chiefs escape with a win back in the day. This was kind of the same. I mean, it felt like Raiders were in field goal range. Everything's all set up. I have no idea what in the world Antonio Pierce and the Raiders were thinking, because, I mean, obviously they weren't thinking, because they were all on a different page of the playbook. But even on the previous play, I mean, it just seemed like run the clock down. You're in field goal range. I mean, it was the extreme edge of field goal range on Sunday, because the kicking conditions were not great. Ball was not carrying well at Arrowhead, but they're in field goal range. Dan Carlson can make that kick, and then they're trying to run a play with no timeouts and 15 seconds left. I mean, that just seemed like a recipe for disaster, and of course, it ended up in total disaster. I mean, not as bad as I mean, I thought if it went badly for the Raiders, it might be just because they didn't manage to get a play. They get tackled in the field of play and then can't get the field goal crew on. This just, absolutely took them out of the game, Nick. What in the world were they thinking and trying to do?
I think they were discouraged by the kicker missing the way he did on the previous one, to where, as Kirk Herbstreit pointed out on the broadcast, he actually hit more of the ground than he did the football. And then the way the holders get the football leaning forward a little bit, you kind of wonder from that side angle that they showed if that had any impact on it or not. I mean, I don't know the mechanics of what they do for them specifically. So, on both fronts, that's why it went as low and had the trajectory it did. So I think that stuck in Antonio Pierce's head, and he's like, okay, well, you got to get as close as possible, because the next gen stats had the probability of them making the field goal from where they're at 65%. And I can't remember what the field goal probability was from the previous one that he kicked on. I can't remember if that one popped out, but I know it was not 65%. So,
well, I can tell you from watching pregame warmups and the kicks during that game that, I mean, I could have told him that kick, because Carlson missed from 55, 56, and 58. None of those were makeable kicks today. I mean, just because of the way that the wind was swirling in that stadium. I mean, I think that the longest kick that I saw made in pregame warmups was 54, and that was not a comfortable make. I mean, this was just the day where there was no range. So, I mean, to me, I feel like it was I get it. Antonio Pierce, to a certain degree, I get seeing your kicker miss from 55, 56, and 58. 50 was a different ballpark. I mean, that's what it would have been from the 32. That was within his range. I mean, Dan Carlson's a good kicker, but when you're asking him to kick from 58 on a day when that was just not possible, that's why I think Antonio Pierce blew it twice. I mean, he sent him out there at certainly 2 kicks, if not 3, that were totally unmakeable. And even Andy Reid talked about the fact that, the one that they took at the end of the first half was not a makeable kick, but they were like, doesn't matter. I mean, it's the end of the half, so if they miss it, there's no harm, no foul. But those, I mean, I like I said, I feel like Antonio Pierce made the wrong decision twice. Actually made the wrong decision probably 4 times.
Well, and that's why he's probably going to be the Raiders head coach next year. What I will say on the play for people kind of wondering what happened. So where I got confused by was why Aiden O'Connell was clapping his hands, because there's normally two ways that they go about it. There's either some kind of hand gesture that the right guard's looking back for, or there's a foot stomp, or there's a clapping of the hands. And the way he's clapping his hands, the Ryan Fitzpatrick believed in the post game that it was because he was trying to get the receiver set. But with how loud the crowd is, they're not going to hear that clap. So I don't understand why you're clapping your hands at that point, because the play call, and Ryan Fitzpatrick speculated the play call came in late, and the headset shuts off somewhere between 15 or 10 seconds. I can't remember which one it is. And he couldn't hear anymore, so then he just had to kind of hurry up and get him to the line. With about 10 seconds, they broke the huddle at about 10 or 11 seconds, tried to hurry up, and then, the right guard sees the hand clapping, puts his hand out there, puts the left hand out there for the center to see, and the center snaps it and trusts that everybody was doing what they're supposed to on that play. So the Raiders center's not at fault on that one. As much as he's going to take the blame from a lot of people, he's just reading what the right guard's telling him. The right guard's reading what the quarterback's clapping his hand. So that is a situational football right there. So unfortunately, have I ever seen a game end like that before? No. And I'm still like, wow, that really happened. That's how a football game ended, whether it involved the Chiefs or not. Like that was insane to see. And I know a lot of the people that are very reps help the Chiefs thing are going to continue to ride that wave. But a lot of the reason that people continue to nitpick the Chiefs the way they do on a national scale, whether it's NFL fan bases or national media, is because, as you and I have talked about before, the Chiefs are in standalone games. Like today is a standalone game. They're the only NFL game on today. And so the country's watching them on a popular day after Thanksgiving. So they're going to nitpick every single thing, talk about how terrible the Chiefs are. The only thing I'm happy about is that the Chiefs played on a Friday, and there's going to be so much football on Sunday that they'll probably forget about the Chiefs and Raiders by the time they do their Monday through Friday shows, until they have to promote the Chiefs Chargers again.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, there's at least the NFL's explanation. I have to go with it. I mean, it didn't make a ton of sense to me, Nick. And obviously the officials had to talk about it for a little bit. And clearly they were, I'm sure, communicating not only with the replay official, but back in New York to try and sort out that last moment call. But as it was explained, and I'm not sure. I know Tayshaun Reed had this. I don't believe there was a pool report done. I normally would be going through myself or Adam Teicher, and we weren't asked to do a pool report. So I don't know if Tayshaun just reached out to the NFL directly, but
it said NFL exec. So
yeah, he was told by Michael Signora that had the clock been running at the snap, then by rule, an illegal shift would convert to a false start. Since the clock was stopped, an illegal shift is a live ball foul. So they're saying it was an illegal shift because the clock was stopped. Had the clock been running, it would have been a false start. So I didn't know that was how it worked.
But again, that goes back to what you were talking about with Antonio Pierce and situational football.
Absolutely. And once again, I mean, if you take your time and sort things out and think things through, those things don't happen. The Raiders put themselves in that spot. And I'm sure, I'm sure there will be a narrative once again out there that the Chiefs, the NFL is rigged and the officials are in for the Chiefs. I don't see any evidence of that, Nick. I just saw two teams today who are both tried really hard to lose this game.
And yes, like there was opportunities for the Chiefs to put that game away, and they didn't execute on those to be able to do that.
Let's talk about some of the ways that which they did try to win this game, Nick, because it wasn't a complete and total disaster. I mean, and there are probably some of you out there who because Nick and I have seen them that are criticizing Mahomes in this game. I have zero criticism of Patrick Mahomes in this game. He throws for 300 plus yards in a game in which he basically had zero time to throw. I mean, he was being pressured on almost every single throw. And even the touchdown to Justin Watson, I mean, I don't know how he got rid of that football. But, given the lack of time that he had to throw most of the day, there were some incompletions. And honestly, there were some drops. I mean, he put some balls on the money that, DeAndre Hopkins had a drop that was an easily catchable ball for him. Travis Kelce, Noah Gray had a drop each. I mean, it wasn't a perfect game for the receivers, but this was a pretty clean game for Mahomes, other than the fact that he had zero time to throw all day.
Yeah, and I guess in terms of clean, what I want to say to some people, here's what I'm going to say about Patrick Mahomes. It feels like there's one side that's arguing offensive line protection, and I will be on that side. Then there's another side that's saying that Patrick Mahomes gets paid a certain amount, so he should be up to that standard. But what everybody's really getting at, and not enough people seem to realize, is what I'm saying, what's happening with the protection, maybe not trusting the left tackle situation, Mahomes feeling like he's got to hurry every throw, speeding up his time, getting him out of rhythm like we talked about in one of our previous shows. All those things stack up to him not being the same confident quarterback that he can be when he has time to throw. There was times when I was watching the game, and I'm watching what's a really bad Raiders offensive line throughout the season. I'm watching them widen a pocket for Aiden O'Connell. And I'm like, if Mahomes had that pocket right there, he can make some throws that people of Patrick of old that people don't realize. And so, that's where people keep basing who Mahomes should be based on when he had Eric Fisher, Mitchell Schwartz, or even when he had Donovan Smith and a better Jawan Taylor, or even Andrew Wiley at right tackle, and and even Orlando Brown. Here's something I thought I'd never say in my lifetime, but I'm going to. Orlando Brown is performed better, even when he's just sticking his arms out and just kick stepping. He performed better than what Wanya Morris did today, and what Kingsley Suamataia did in week 2. And so, it didn't. Was I a big Orlando Brown fan? No, he didn't have the athletic ability to be what they needed to, but I mean, he at least did enough a handful of times to where he wasn't going to give that level of pressure up. He may give some up, but it wasn't a record-setting day like in top 3 of left tackle pressures given up, and like it was according to the Next Gen stats for Wanya Morris today. So I feel like whenever people are like, well, this receiver's open, this is open, that's open. Right, but when Mahomes feels like he's got to get the ball out in less than 2.5 seconds and half the time his back foot's hit, you're overestimating some of the throws he can make on a regular basis. The reason he takes off at times is to buy time to move a defender so he can make a throw. And that's part of why he does what he does. So I feel like whenever I'm talking about O-line protection and everything, I'm telling you why he's performing the way he is. And I just hear other people when they say he's awful this year. He's this, he's that. Okay, the reason he's struggling is because of those things we're talking about. So then that takes him out of rhythm. So then that takes this offense out of rhythm, and then that derails some of the drives. So it's a cause and effect situation.
Yeah, and and there was a couple of throws today that I wasn't sure, and I'll need to go back on the all 22. I know you watched the next gen stats, in the Prime Vision, so
Prime Vision, buddy.
so you may already have a take on this one, but there were a couple of plays that normally Travis and Patrick are on the same page. They had a couple of throws today that they were adjustments and reads, and Mahomes had to rush the ball quickly. I don't know if he was hit and that caused the ball to go a different direction than Travis went. I mean, there was a couple of those balls, or it was just that, hey, today they weren't on the same page. They were reading things differently. Or again, Mahomes didn't have time to read the same thing that Travis did. So Travis may have taken the route one way. Mahomes saw what he saw while under duress and put the ball a different direction. And Andy Reid, I mean, pretty much laid that out too in the post game when asked about the change and about, because one thing I thought was notable about this is that normally Andy Reid does not like to change two offensive line positions at once. He abhors it. I mean, he doesn't want to make two changes at once, which is what he had to do today. And yet, when asked about that disruption, he's like, well, you know what's more disruptive? Having your quarterback hit every single time. That was why they had to do it, because Mahomes was under duress, and that's why I think it even affected, like I said, those some of those throws to Kelce, where Kelce goes one way, Patrick goes another. Whether it was because he was hit or it was just that he didn't see the same picture that Travis did because he didn't have time.
Yeah, and I'm glad that Andy Reid said that, because I haven't got to listen to the presser yet because I was busy editing while we had it on our air. So I mean, I'm doing 5 different things at that time, but. This is the thing I want people to take away. It doesn't matter who the quarterback is. If they're not getting enough time on a regular basis to get into a rhythm, if they're taking hit after hit after hit after hit. So for people that don't realize, I remember correctly, Patrick Mahomes had been pressured somewhere between 13 to 15 times by halftime. Like, that shouldn't be happening. And by the end of the game, Wanya Morris had given up 11 pressures before they took him out. And then I don't know how many other pressures there were outside of that, just in the second half alone. But there's only so many hits a quarterback can take before they got to make a decision. And I personally think the decisions Patrick Mahomes is having to make on a regular basis when he goes back is, okay, what are the two to three reads that he can make? And some of the formations the Chiefs are running, I think they're running so he can decipher and read through them in 2.5 seconds, in 2.4 seconds maybe. And I think that's why some of the formations they're running on a regular basis are because of that, so he can go through them, quickly decipher, make the throw that he wants to, or run and try to potentially buy time. But I think this offense has been tailored to what the offensive tackles are capable of right now, or what they feel they're capable of. And that's why defenses are getting a beat more and more on it each and every week, is because I think they're having to condense the playbook down based on the pressure that they've been getting the past 3 weeks against, okay defensive lines, not the Pittsburgh Steelers of the world or the Cleveland Browns of the world, but just either middle of the road or below average defensive lines that are getting legitimate pressure. Like, I could understand if both tackles are struggling with Max Crosby. That's Max Crosby. Totally get that. But there was guys' names I didn't even recognize today that were getting pressure, and I'm like, that's not good. And I watched coaches film, and I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's they made him look pretty good there in a couple plays. But yeah, no, you're 100% right. Like, it's there with Mahomes and Kelce, like you're talking about. I think it's a combination of all three you threw out there. I think it's all the above. Because there's what I saw when I was watching, there was a lot of third and mediums. That's when the Raiders were showing like they were going to stay in zone at the sticks, and then they would bring blitzes. They'd bring either all-out blitz or some of that. And there was a couple times that, like, if they anticipate that blitz on those downs, that Kelce, on one of those plays, if Kelce runs a slant out of it, like, he's gone for 30 yards. Hits him versus safety. And he did a sit down there, and it was available, and I think Mahomes threw it to him on one of them. But there's a couple times, or there's a handful of times that, like, man, if they read it correctly, or if Mahomes and somebody else is reading it the same way, those turn into explosive plays. And I think that's the bigger thing I hope the coaching staff takes out of it is going forward, I just want to see one route on every single play that is a contingency plan. That is there for the taking if the team blitzes. If the team blitzes a certain way, do you have a contingency plan? So where they just run a slant or a crosser, I don't care. But if that comes, he's got somewhere to just throw it. He knows that outlet's there, that if it happens, boom, take that and go. And I think like the crossing route to Worthy today, I know that was designed, but like that's the level of speed. You can burn some teams and make them stop blitzing if you can do some, if you have some of that level of speed to be able to go across the middle and boom, go, goodbye.
Yeah, one thing also that Reed mentioned that I thought was interesting was that we talked about the run game too, because the Chiefs obviously had really a difficult time. Other than one breakout play that Isaiah Pacheco had for the 34 yards, the rest of the day he and Kareem Hunt had zero running space, and Mahomes had zero running space. I mean, normally if Mahomes is gonna get pressured in the pocket, he's gonna find lanes, but the Raiders really hemmed in the Chiefs' run, and I'm wondering if other teams are going to watch what the Raiders did today, because, I mean, they ran run fits that absolutely plugged those lanes. So, there was just absolutely no place for the Chiefs to run the football inside. There was no place for Mahomes to escape up the middle like he loves to do. I mean, the Raiders played that perfectly. I mean, I can only imagine that, some teams are going to go to school on this, Nick, because it worked really, really well. And to your point about Mahomes, had he struggled today, he would have turned over the football. But the fact that the Raiders played him that well, his offensive line played that poorly, and he protected the football while throwing for 300 yards, that's pretty remarkable to me. I mean, that is what you pay Mahomes for. And one thing I know we wanted to talk about was the throw to DeAndre Hopkins, because that back shoulder throw to Hopkins, Mahomes hasn't had a receiver that can make that catch, that he has that faith in. I mean, the only other player that he's ever had that kind of faith in was Travis Kelce. But that was just, that's almost something, that's a throw you can only make to DeAndre Hopkins.
Yeah, and those two, if Mahomes can get times in the weeks ahead, what him and DeAndre can do together, especially you're talking about on that out and up. And then that one in the end zone that he wasn't able to come down with, I don't know if you saw the replay on it. He caught it with his index and his thumb. Yeah. Nothing else. It was the index and thumb. He caught the football. Unreal, man. Like DeAndre makes the plays that guy can make, and just how he controls his body and how he's able to contort his body and make the catches he does and make them cleanly. Just so fun to watch, man. So I'm excited to kind of see if they do get more time in pass protection, what those two can do together.
Yeah. I'm going to throw out a silly idea, Nick, and see what you think about this, because
I hate it already. No, I'm just kidding.
I know everybody's down on this team for the way that they played the last couple of weeks. I get it. I mean, I truly do. I keep looking at this game, and I mean, the Chiefs, these were a lot of self-inflicted wounds. I mean, without the penalties, without just some of the mental miscues, without what I think are probably some fatigue miscues on both the offensive and defensive sides of the football, if the Chiefs had played simply a more fundamentally sound game, they probably win this game by a couple of touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
Am I crazy?
No, you're not wrong. They could have, if there's a handful of things that they execute correctly on both sides of the ball, the Raiders are never in that game, but they didn't, and the Raiders got back in the game, and the Raiders honestly should have won the game. But as the football gods would have it, a quarterback started clapping his hands, and things went sideways for Las Vegas.
Well, I mean, that probably the best thing that the Chiefs had going for them was probably third down today. I mean, they were at least 44% on third downs. They held the Raiders to 25%. That's good. But I feel like once again, I mean, a lot of the other things that did not go the Chiefs' way that, are bad numbers. 1 of 5 in the red zone. The penalties were an issue. But a lot of those, I mean, Chris Jones lining up offsides. I mean, these are fatigue issues. These are tired football players, and I get it. Everybody in the league is tired right now. I think the Chiefs are probably more tired than most. Well, first of all, they had one of the earliest bye weeks of any team, which Chris Jones liked to point out in his press conference. Not real happy with the NFL, and it says he wants to bring it up with the NFLPA about how the Chiefs have to play 3 games in 10 days in December, but had a week 4 bye. So I get it, Chris. I do, but that's the other part of it is that have the Chiefs been doing enough to give these guys rest? Because I just don't feel like that they've utilized their rotations deep enough. Because we've talked about it, Nick. I mean, Chris Jones playing 80% of the snaps. George Karlaftis 80%. I mean, they're giving guys way too big of a workload. And clearly the only thing you can come to is that they simply just don't trust their depth. But at some point they're going to have to, right?
Right now they're trying to get the number 1 seed. Like that's their prize. That's the prize they're after. They're trying to get the number 1 seed. And unfortunately, Buffalo hasn't stumbled enough to where the Chiefs can let up a little bit if they need to, like you talked about, and rotate in at 50% or whatever percentage you would potentially want them to. So until they can lock in that number 1 seed, I unfortunately just don't think there's going to be much rotation in terms of depth along the D line or in other spots where it may need it. The biggest change I think you're going to be able to see between now and whenever is Pacheco getting more of the snaps and Kareem able to get less and try to get back to I don't know a guy who's not completely worn out.
Well, getting 7 touches today should help, but there's one other thing I wanted to talk about, because it was another play that got a lot of attention and to me was, just indicative of how close the Chiefs were to putting this game away fairly easily. But that 3rd and 2 on the deep throw to Xavier Worthy, Nick, with a little bit more time, that's a walk-in touchdown for Patrick Mahomes to Xavier Worthy. Didn't work out that way.
Yeah, on the 3rd and 2, I thought they were trying to recreate what they did against the Ravens in the AFC Championship game with Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Marquez was able to catch it. Or it might have been Marquez. I can't remember what he wanted to be called anymore. But
Marquez. Yes, you got it.
Yeah, I said it correctly the second time around. I'm sure he'll correct me if he hears this somehow, but I doubt he will. But, yeah, the Raiders are selling out to stop the run. And, the Chiefs had the numbers to keep it even in pass protection. Just unfortunately, a guy they were anticipating to stay back in coverage potentially was the blitzer off the edge coming at Mahomes and rush Mahomes. Because as soon as Mahomes' back foot hit, he just had to throw it. Like he wasn't going to be able to put air under it. He had to make a decision. Either I put this in the vicinity and hope Xavier can adjust to it, or I get hit and this ball gets knocked out and Raiders get it right there, and who knows where the ball game goes from that point. So that was the decision I feel like he had to make. People can disagree with me if they want, but I've watched the tape over and over again, and that's a conclusion I came to. And I think Xavier did the best he could to try to adjust to it, but I think he's still learning how to track a football in the NFL and in Arrowhead and in those lights and all that stuff combined, and they just weren't able to connect, under the circumstances.
Yeah, it reminded me because before we started recording, we were talking about Tyreek, and Tyreek probably makes that catch. Probably doesn't make it in his rookie year like Xavier Worthy though. But what Tyreek did after his rookie year is he went out and he got his own personal wide receivers coach to teach him about things like that, about how you time your steps and about how you do these things so that you can maximize your speed, you can keep your speed through turns, all of these things. That's what Tyreek worked on in the offseason for the first few years in the league, and that's what turned him into the receiver that he is. And I always say nobody gets better during the season. If you're going to improve as an NFL player, you're going to improve between March and June. It's the time on your own that you're going to improve. If you don't put that time in at that time of year, you're not going to get any better. If Xavier goes out and finds himself a wide receivers coach during this offseason to work out on his own, he could really have a spectacular breakout in year 2.
Yeah, he's got the makings early on with what he did last week and this week. There's a lot of he's shown growth on some of the short and intermediates that they're giving him opportunities on, to where there's a lot of promise for next year if he can continue to build on that week by week going forward.
Yep. Another tight one down to the end, Nick, but the Chiefs escape with this one. 10th straight postseason appearance for the Chiefs will be coming up. That is tied for the second longest streak in NFL history behind the Patriots. Did that between 2009 and 2019 for 11 straight. They could tie that next year. Any parting thoughts for you, Nick, on today's win?
Defense had some hiccups here and there, and they got some stuff that they're going to have to figure out in terms of their pass rush and in terms of some of the mismatches and that the Raiders were able to exploit. And let's be honest, Norv Turner was able to exploit in the Chiefs secondary there. And if there's I know Norv's just doing it to help out his son there in Las Vegas, but he needs to be a guy that's coaching an offensive coordinator somewhere in the league. And maybe that opens the eyes to some people in the league to where if you've got a young offensive coordinator, maybe some of those senior assistants that are good at what they do are the ones kind of helping coach up that staff. Some of those, the coordinator spot or maybe some positions or something like that. Because, the Raiders were able to manipulate some stuff today because of Norv Turner.
Yeah. The Chiefs secondary is probably a conversation to be had. We could probably spend an entire show on that one because there's a lot of things going on right now in that Chiefs secondary, and they got to clean things up. That's what December is going to be about. It's going to be trying to tighten up some of the things that they're not going well in that defense because even though they only gave up 17 points today, this was still, not their best effort.
They're playing Aiden O'Connell. It's going to be a different game with Justin Herbert.
Yeah. Aiden Collins just put 340 yards on you. That's a concern.
You're not wrong, Matt.
Not wrong. No. The 11-1 Chiefs, these guys get a couple of days off, Nick. We were talking about them being tired. That's going to help out quite a bit. They're going to get 2 days of rest extra over the Los Angeles Chargers, who are coming in next week on Sunday Night Football on KSHB 41.
Yep. You don't have to turn the channel if you were on there for Black Friday today. You can just come back next Sunday and it'll be right there waiting for you. As will Sunday Sound Off and many other shows on KSHB 41.
All of your pregame and postgame coverage. We can't wait for it, Nick. All right, everybody. Have a great one. We are going to be we'll be back on Tuesday night for the Chiefs Digest Live Q&A, and then we'll bring you back next week. 41 is the mic after Chiefs and Chargers.
Till next time, I bid you adieu.
You've been listening to 41 is the Mic, presented by KSHB 41, your home of the Chiefs and Chiefs Digest.